Hey guys, Ethan from Tagmods here, and this is our Intel Gamer Days Spin Master build. Intel challenged us to build a pretty crazy over-the-top build to celebrate Gamer Days. Their latest branding and artwork is this pattern here, and it looks very much like an optical illusion, so I kind of took that and ran with it, made it spin with a PC in it, and this is where we're at. Let's break down how we made it.
Let's start with the hardware for this spinning behemoth. We've got the Z590 Aorus Master motherboard, the Intel 11900K CPU, 32GB of the some Dominator Platinum in white, the MP600 Pro 2TB M.2 SSD, and the 3080 Extreme Waterforce GPU. From Corsair we've got the SF 750W power supply with a Pro cable kit. We've got a couple of boxes of the QL 120mm fans, and the complete HydroX ecosystem. This job starts with our CNC machine. If this PC is going to spin, the base needs to be super strong. So I start out with a massive piece of beech hardwood butcher block, and I cut out the two big supporting triangles, the connecting piece that will allow the bearing to connect to, as well as a big base piece that will counteract the movement of the PC. The CNC machine naturally rounds off internal 90-degree angles just because of the radius of the bit, so I need to come back in with the chisel and manually square them out so that all the pieces are locked together nicely. I use my trim router with a round over bit to come in and clean up all of the internal shapes. I do that on both sides to get a nice clean round over look. I will have to come back and manually sand out the tighter corners where the bit doesn't fit in. Before I join any of the pieces together, I come in with the laser and etch the Intel Gamer Days logo into the beech. With everything cleaned up, I can begin to fit the two triangle pieces into the base piece. I have to clean up a little bit extra as I go to get a nice snug fit, but they eventually slide into place perfectly. With the glue still wet on the two triangle pieces, I make sure I fasten in the cross beam so that everything can move where it needs to move. So I put a generous amount of glue on that piece and clamp it down and leave it for the night. When lasering the butcher block, you're never going to get an even finish, so I come in with a black wood wax just to even out that finish and give a nice bold black background to our etch. Which brings us to everyone's favourite part of the project, sanding. There's a whole bunch of it that needs to be done, so I'm going to skip over it. With most of the woodwork done, it's time to focus on the acrylic box that will house the hardware. The front piece of that box is made out of a 10mm piece of opal that we're carving the Intel optical illusion, while the back panel of the box will be a black 10mm nice and strong piece of acrylic that will work as the base for mounting to the wood. The side walls were made out of 6mm clear acrylic. This is version 1 of those walls. I didn't film any of the others just because of time constraints. But the original plan was to mount the hardware to the outside of the optical illusion, whereas we later changed to put all the hardware inside the acrylic box so the optical illusion would actually give its best effect. The final iteration of the outside walls are about 2.5 times as tall and include holes for fans, motherboard and GPU mounting. Although these aren't the final walls that were attached, they were glued on in the same manner. It's just a bit of acrylic weld and clamping them down. With the 10mm opal fully carved, just time to satisfyingly peel off all that paper and then get it ready for some resin. So I'll hot glue some HDPE around the edges so that the resin won't stick to it and they can peel off easier later. And I gradually mix up our 5 different colours and pour them in. With our acrylic box now finalised, I painted the inside walls black, which will give us a nice glossy black finish on the outside, which won't take away from our optical illusion and will contrast nicely with the pale beech wood. The essential part to this entire project is what's called a slip ring, so we can splice that into the power cord for the computer, and that'll allow that cord to spin without getting tangled on itself, hence allowing the whole PC to spin and be powered at the same time. This is just simply soldered in place, covered in heat shrink, and then furthered by electrical tape to give it a nice strong connection. After a whole bunch of headaches, we finally managed to get the acrylic box mounted to the timber. Originally we were meant to use a worm drive motor, which just didn't have the torque to spin the case at this point in time while it's empty. So there was no way it was going to work once it was full of hardware and liquid. So we threw a massive windscreen wiper motor in there because we knew that'd give us the torque we needed to shift the weight. And we also changed from a external drive gear system to an internal drive gear system by disassembling an electronic Lazy Susan that we had upstairs. With all the base construction pretty much done, I just have to finish off the lid and then we can start getting hardware in the PC. So we sand the opal from 180 grit all the way up to 800 grit before applying a few layers of a gloss clear coat to give us a nice smooth glossy finish. I use the acrylic bender to bend up a bunch of brackets for the power supply and graphics card, just to make mounting them in the acrylic block nice and easy. That's pretty much everything for the project built, so it's time to get all the hardware ready to go in. We weren't stoked on how the internals looked once everything was laid out. The GPU was a little bit shorter than I was expecting. There was just a lot of exposed cables and a lot of open space, so we decided super last minute to build a custom res to act as a gap filler as well as a spot to hide some cables underneath. Quick bit of CNC work later and it was time to put the res together. got that in, filled the loop, spun it a bunch of times, get as much air out as we could, and we're ready for the reveal.